what if my parents have different political views than I do? How do I disagree with them?
How do you disagree with them?
Yeah.
Okay. So what if my parents have different political views than I do? Question one. And number two, how do I disagree with them?
Yeah.
Okay. Number one, don't assume that your political views are the right ones.
But they're my views. So.
Right. Do you know statistically, like your views today are, first of all, if I were to think about my views yesterday are different than my views today, and probably my views today might look a little bit different than my views tomorrow because our views politically change like the style of clothing, unfortunately, if you look historically.
I haven't changed my style in like 15 years.
That's
so
okay.
Not
neither,
I don't know if I
neither have your
your
parents because we talked about this in
That's
an
right. You
earlier
hit a certain
podcast.
age, and you stop changing your.
Yeah, but what we see statistically is that people often become more one way the older they get. What?
Yes. Yeah. You're right.
I
if you trace statistics and you look at like people's political views based on their age,
they also often
there is like
trend
sort of a
There's
trajectory that people go on.
Yes, thank you. That was
Not
well
every
said.
person follows along that curve, but it is the majority of people.
Yes. So I didn't want to say.
So you're saying people's political views change?
People's political views change, and don't assume that the one that you have
Just
right
because
now
I
is
thought
right.
something very different 10 years ago doesn't mean I'm not right both times, because it's me, and I'm always right. That's
right. Yeah, the Bible would call that arrogance, and God opposes the proud and gives grace to the humble. I don't have the Bible verse right now, but it's in there.
Hold on, let me go get my sackcloth and ashes. I'll be right back.
That's right, because you don't want to be on God's opposing side. So always approach these type of conversations with humility, which is something I'm learning, by the way. Like,
Aren't we all? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's so hard because we think that if somebody disagrees with us politically, instantly canceled.
That's it.
Canceled.
Over.
We're done. Right?
Boycott.
Yeah, but that's not actually how like Jesus people have relationships. Jesus people are actually expected to have relationships with people who think differently.
Yeah, but about politics?
About
we all know politics is the hope for a new world. Oh, wait, no, that was our last question.
That was your last question.
Right,
exactly.
right.
So that's why this instantly becomes a secondary issue conversation. And secondary issue conversation, Augustine makes it very clear. And I love that quote, and I forgot it. He says, in essentials, in non-essentials, charity.
Unity? In essentials, unity?
In essentials, unity.
Yeah.
Look it up.
In essentials, unity. In non-essentials, liberty. In all things,
Charity. That's right.
There we go.
Augustine for the win. And so when we think about non-essentials,
Professor Joey with the layup.
yeah, we need charity and liberty when it comes to non-essentials. Non-essentials, we have charity and have liberty. That's from Augustine. And again, the Bible, Peter tells us to, approach type of conversations like this with humility.
Yeah.
Also seek unity.
That old school charity word is like the word for like God's love for us, right? That like deep abiding love, that supernatural love that we're supposed to have for each other as the family of Christ, like the big deal love. We hear charity, we think like, and in all things, donate to the Red Cross. But
or like charity is something you do after I check out at
it's
Vons.
a word that's lost some meaning for us in modern English, but it is like, that's like what he's saying is like in all things we should be deeply loving each other,
Yes.
whether we agree or disagree, whether
Yes.
it's these like whatever kinds of issues that we're talking about, especially secondary issues.
Exactly. So let's just take it from the child to parent relationship understanding. So you have a child or a student who's under their parents' care, and they have different secondary views. The child or the student should, I believe, should first approach it with humility, understanding that you're talking to a parent. Because you have a responsibility to obey and honor that parent, according to Ephesians 6,
There we go.
2-3. However, it's actually one of the 10 Commandments. So Paul is writing to the church at Ephesus in Ephesians 6, but all of Ephesians 6, he's actually giving us a proper order of family relationships and even church relationships, which is where a lot of our views come from when it comes to some of the secondary controversial things. But one thing is pretty clear that's pretty much not really debated is the responsibility of a child to a parent, which is to honor and obey. Ephesians 6, 2-3 says it this way: honor your father and mother. This is the first command with a promise that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. Now, it's really important that we understand that your role as a student or a child is to obey and honor the parent, unless they're asking you to disobey God explicitly.
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, then we do what Peter says in Acts 5:29. We must obey God rather than man. Respectfully, though. We don't have to, yell, scream, or break things. We can respectfully decline.
I think the charge to honor there is still important, right? Like
Yes.
in how we were to be disobedient, like we are still to be honoring. And there are going to be probably very few like times where you get to exercise like, well, God says this, and so I'm going to totally fly in the face of what you're telling me to do.
Right. Yeah, and so that's totally not your job as this child to parent your parents.
Mm-hmm.
And so
It
that's
so feels like it is, though. Like,
I
so
know.
often you want to be that person, right? Like, you want to be the one to enlighten your parents. And I think if we were to talk truthfully about most of our lives in our families, like those are the people who know us and we know the best. And so that usually means all of our filters are like gone. And so we just tend to blast each other because we're comfortable with each other. And then when you bring in like deep emotionally held beliefs, like people's political beliefs, sometimes that can get like heated.
Yeah, and so maybe your parents have a disordered priority in their home when it comes to political beliefs versus your beliefs about Jesus and how he's ordered us to love well and love God and love others, right? And that might be disordered in your home during this particular season, and you may think it's your job to correct that. I would say pull the reins. You rein it in. Read James chapter 1, right? Be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry, right? Right now, you might be going through a trial, and that trial is there for a reason. That may be the trial that you're in. The trial may not be coronavirus. It may not be the economy, but it may be the fact that you need to hold your tongue while you hear your parents say some things that you disagree, and that's okay. Right? That's the trial you're in. Because here's the thing. We forget that one of the biggest characteristics that God is trying to instill in his people is one particular word. You know what that word is? I'll tell you.
I want to know. Don't pause. Keep going.
The word is called perseverance. Perseverance. And perseverance must finish its work so that you can become mature and complete. And so if God's goal in your life as a student is maturity and completeness, he's going to let you watch maybe some immaturity, and you're going to have to hold back. And you're going to have to persevere through some uncomfortable conversations. And your job is not to snap. And your job is not to break. And your job is not to become angry or be quick to speak and slow to become angry. Or quick to speak and slow to listen, right? That's typically what ends up happening. But the book of James tells us completely the other way. Your sanctification process will have more will have more listening and less talking.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's just not how most of us tend to do our relationships with our parents. That's not how we tend to do politics. And you put both those things together, and man, it can be a firestorm, especially.
Man, it's an opportunity for growth.
There we go. Yeah, it's a contentious season
Yeah.
time in our world right now when it comes to political things. And if you live in a house where people, that's a big deal, like it can be tough to exercise that. It can be a trial of perseverance.
Absolutely.
But I think a big part of it comes in like realizing like, man, it's not my job to be the Holy Spirit to my parents. It's not my job to convict them.
Right.
It's not my job to train them in righteousness.
No.
The Bible doesn't say train up a parent in the way they should go and they'll follow it. Like,
Yeah.
I need to honor them, and maybe there's opportunities to share my perspective. Maybe there's a chance to learn from them, and maybe there's a chance that they'll learn from us. But if they don't, we don't take it personally.
No, and I what you said, actually triggered a couple thoughts. One kind of probably final thought regarding this is that we need, and if this is the person listening to this podcast is listening to us right now, I would just invite them before they need to talk to anybody, they need to talk to Jesus and release your parents from the responsibility to think like you. Right? This is really the process of where forgiveness comes from. First, Jesus released you from the responsibility of the sin and the wrath that you deserve towards God, he released you from that. And so we actually need to start with releasing people from the responsibility of the pain of those uncomfortable conversations that may have happened in the past. And now, once we've released them, once we've forgiven them, then we can actually have these conversations with love and respect. Start praying for your parents. I will be praying for you, and I'm sure that these are going to be great conversations in the future. We would love to actually hear from this person again, and see how that goes. If you actually take any of these pieces of advice, because it's not about just attaining more information, right? Because the Bible says knowledge puffs up, but love builds up, right? And so if we point you towards love and you actually apply it, the nature and the relationship that you have with your parents will actually increase. This is an opportunity to grow in your relationship with your parents if you choose love. And so I really hope that this helps and this conversation was transforming.
That's great. I really hope that's really practical for a lot of people. Because whether it's your parents or other people in your life,
totally,
these difficult conversations come up, and the Christ-like way forward usually looks pretty different than how we see things being exercised in the world around us.
Well, there's so much pressure in our culture to be quick to speak and be quick to come angry. Like that's the cool thing to do right now.
You get Twitter followers.
Yeah,
you gotta be quick.
And then or YouTube, you got the editing happening fast. You have people who talk fast on YouTube, like some of us. Me.
Half of us.
A third of us.
I don't know what you mean.